Criminal justice reform, 2.2 million. That is how many people there are in America that are incarcerated now. In the 80s, that number was close to 500,000. Our country's population makes up less than 5% of the total population around the globe. Yet we have more than a quarter of the number of people incarcerated. The United States alone spends $50 billion on the people that we have behind bars. We release over 600,000 people annually from state and federal facilities. Since the 90s, our law enforcement agencies have reduced the violent crime and homicide rates by about half. Many people across our nation, including President Obama, have been working hard to transform our criminal justice system and make our country better as a whole. The two things I would like to discuss are the changes in the juvenile system and how minorities are impacted by the justice system. There are necessary changes that have been made and are being made still to reform the juvenile system. Research shows that youth generally respond better to therapy and other forms of rehabilitation than adults. Many organizations, such as Models for Change, are doing extensive research to help reform the system for the youth of America. The recidivism rates need to be lowered and the sentences need to be less harsh for nonviolent crimes. There are changes being made to the ages where children are being tried in youth courts instead of adult courts. There are more possibilities for offenders to get help so they can make changes and have a successful life after they commit their crime. Models for Change are working hard to put all their findings into practice so they can make a difference in the youth of America. In Louisiana, from 2006 to 2010, there was almost a 50% decline in the number of juvenile arrests. Over $100 million has been used to make these changes. Everything that has been discovered and the ideas that have been successful are available online to help reform the juvenile systems across America. One major change in Texas that became effective in September of 2009 was a requirement for a more thorough review of juvenile cases that are possibly being transferred to adult court. Before the law changed, there was only a one-day advance to supply information regarding each case. Now the court is required to inform the defense attorney and the prosecuting attorney by giving them all written material relative to the court's decision 5 days before the hearing. The goal for this change is to keep from unnecessarily sending children to adult court and to help everyone be on the same page regarding facts that affect the case. Another important Texas law that was adapted to help protect our youth, effective in September of 2011, was the separation of juvenile delinquent detainees or of 17 or younger from adult offenders. Not only are the juveniles required to be out of sight from the adults, they are also not allowed to communicate with them or hear them as well. Counties are required to have a system in place for deciding which youth offenders are allowed to be held before trial in a detention facility specifically for them, instead of in jail where there are adults. September 2009 had other changes as well. Children ages 14 to 17 now have a chance to earn parole after committing a capital felony. Before this change, the only option was life in prison without the opportunity of parole. Since children have a better chance to grow up and change their mindset, the court recognizes that there is a possibility they can turn their life around. Even though this change was made, the people sent to prison before this change are still required to serve their life in prison. There are many practices already in place to help reduce racial and ethnic bias regarding the legal system. From 2001 to 2013, there were over 7 million New York citizens that received tickets, and more than 80% of them were African American or Hispanic, but less than 25% of them were actually found guilty. PROP, Police Reform Organizing Project, is working to change the way that NPD operates. Even though the City Council proposed changes with the Criminal Justice Reform Act of 2016, the police want to make sure that the racism issue is addressed and that everyone is treated equally. The Criminal Law Reform Project, CLRP, is working to transform the beginning process of the justice system, police interaction through sentencing. The ACLU found that the amount of prisoners in federal facilities has grown almost 800% over the last 30 plus years. In 2012, there were over 3,000 people serving life sentences for nonviolent crimes. The CLRP is trying to stop so many people from going to jail or prison, especially when it's a result of racial bias. They are also working to change the way police enforce the law. The Sentencing Project has done extensive research regarding crime and punishment in the United States, focusing on African Americans and other minorities. One study showed that almost 50% of the prisoners that are serving life sentences are Black and about 17% are Hispanic. White people are less likely to be charged under habitual offender laws than Black people, even though they have similar criminal records, which results in more Black people going to prison. A suggested reform is to cut down on the severity of the punishment for more serious crimes. Keeping the public safe is a major factor, but some of the crimes considered serious do not have to have such harsh punishments. African Americans are often affected more by this because they are more likely to have a criminal record. Racial bias training has already made an impact in California, where a survey showed progress with judges and their attitudes towards people with a different skin color. Jurors could also be exposed to this training to help prevent their racial bias as well. In 2008, Iowa became the first state to use racial impact legislation. Racial impact helps predict the effect of changes in the law on each race and ethnicity. After hearing some of these statistics and ideas about reform, I hope that you understand the need for the reform in the criminal justice system if you didn't already. There are so many crazy things that we hear in the news and on social media, but if you check the actual facts, there is so much more to be discovered. How can some Atlanta teachers and administrators serve up to 7 years in prison for cheating on test scores, but a college student from Stanford who raped someone is only sentenced to 6 months?